introduce and welcome everybody who's listening. And once upon a time, the idea of having a virtual audience sitting in their bedrooms, their living rooms, or whatever, sort of hanging on our every word, and examining our faces and saying, well, have they got big noses, or what their like, and have they got wrinkles? This was an unknown territory to most of us. But all of a sudden, everybody in the world, if they have access to technology and they're allowed to use it, which we'll come back to, then we're all getting experts quite quickly. But I'd like to start on money before this pandemic, if you can remember what that was like, because I want to talk to you both about what your attitude was to money before the prospect that's currently in front of us all, which is that none of us will have any. But before this pandemic, we were all going along, and different people had different kind of attitudes to money. But one of the things that became very clear to Olga and I, who founded Smart Purse, was that women, whatever their background, tended to have quite an anxiety about their right to own money, to spend money, to invest money, and to kind of accumulate money. So I'm interested in both of you. What would you say your attitude to money has been so far as educated women who are finding your way? You're comedians, so people would think you're immensely confident. That may not be true. You're earning your own living, so you've got to have to be reasonably brave because you're self-employed. So as I say, you're confident, you're brave. Apparently, is that how you feel about money? Confident and brave.
Oh, thanks for drinking water then, Lola. Leave it to me. I think that's your answer, Jude. Yeah. Question. I think if you've only known being self-employed, you kind of, I think you're not used to a regular salary, so you kind of build up a muscle for that unpredictability, which Lola and I have been talking about since all of this COVID-19 has kicked off. It sounds strange, but it's the one time you sort of feel that muscle's already been flexed. You're kind of used to money just disappearing and then money appearing. I don't know, Lola, if you'd agree with that.
Yeah, well, it's all very kind of temperamental, and you don't know when anything's going to come in and when you're going to get your invoice paid, and it could be months, or you might have a dry patch of work, so you're not even getting an invoice that's going to be paid. So therefore you're a bit more kind of used to that. I guess there's a position of, like you say, as you introduced us, we're educated, we've been to university, we've got a CV that is not going to impress anyone massively, but we have a kind of privilege there that we'll be able to hopefully pre-COVID-19 earn some money if we get to a really desperate position.
Yeah, we have choice.
With a bit more ease than most people, I suppose. So there's the security, I suppose, in that sense. But there's always a feeling of slight insecurity that you're carrying around when you do a kind of creative job that isn't got a salary that's going to back you up. So it's weird. I feel very unconfident all the time financially. But then, like Joe says, you've kind of flexed the muscle of it. So you're not you're used to panicking, if you see what I mean.
You're working in a freelance world, and you're doing that. Yeah. You love what you do. You love being writers and comedians. You chose that above a kind of a stable job that would give you a weekly salary and a pension.
Yeah.
Do you put money into pensions?
No.
How old are you both, roughly?
We're both 33, exactly. Not even roughly. We're both 33. And actually, I'd say we're getting. Well, I'll speak on behalf of both of us because we always think the same. No, Joe, you can say what you want. I'd actually say as each year passes, feel less confident about. There's a sort of notion of our peers were earning similar amounts of money earlier on, even if they were freelance or not freelance or had quite secure jobs. the disparity in wealth wasn't so apparent. And I think the older we're getting, the more we're realizing that disparity, maybe. So I think that's kicking in as we go into our 30s further along, even though I know that's not, it's not that significant an age really, but it's, for us, I think it's felt like a bit of a juncture in terms of feeling a little bit more, I guess it's a point in more stable careers where you might start earning more money.
And yet, freelance career, you've got no certainty that that's the case.
No, you don't know when you'll get, you might have a really good year and then not such good 6 months and then another good 2 years, or, it moves around. And but I don't think either of us, I don't have a pension. Do you have a pension, Jo?
No,
I had a temp job a few years ago where they sort of tried to set me up a pension because I think they had to or something. And so I was there for a few weeks and they set me up some weird pension plan and put a few pennies in it. And that sort of freaked me out completely because I was like, I want that money now. What is this?
So you didn't then go, oh goody, I've got a pension plan set up, I'll now put some money into it every week. You didn't begin that?
No, I tried to see how I could close it as soon as possible.
And why?
Close it as soon as I could.
I think that was just because it was a temp job and I didn't really understand why it was there. And it was I'd literally worked there for 3 weeks or something, so I didn't understand why they had to have me on in that system. But I think I don't know if it's more, I guess that's probably an anxiety and a fear of not understanding pensions, probably, that I understand a basic premise that they'll help you later in life, but I don't know, you sort of it feels too far away, I suppose.
Do you think that women, because historically, women are historically there to sort of find a man who would then be the breadwinner? I mean, historically. And so, my feeling is that women generally haven't been taught to think that, their number one responsibility is to kind of start getting a career that would give them a salary that would support the family. I mean, even women end up often doing a huge amount of the support of the family, and there are so many single mothers, etc. But psychologically, you don't set off in life going, right, I'm the breadwinner, I'll earn money, and I'll also start building pensions and assets and bonds and all of these words that traditionally women haven't been encouraged to bother their little heads with.
Yeah.
So do you think you've inherited that kind of idea that it's not really anything to do with you?
Oh, I wonder. I mean, I think I do remember my nana saying to me once, "Oh, you'll find a nice man who'll pay for everything, and you'll find a nice rich husband." And then my auntie chiming in and say she'll make her own money, and me finding them both kind of funny when they said that because it didn't really mean anything to me. But I guess there is a notion of that sort of ticking along somewhere in the background. I don't feel like that was in my household. My mum sorted out everything, and my dad wasn't in charge of stuff like that, really.
So you watched your mother taking control of the money?
Yes, I think so. But there wasn't much money going on, so it was. So, but sorting out all the kind of admin of stuff. But there was a long period that neither of them were working. So they were on receiving benefits. So it wasn't to do sort of breadwinners, but to do with sorting it out. I suppose it was actually more my mum that was sorting stuff out. So I don't know if I've got it in that sense, but in a more societal way, definitely, I think that's. I don't know what you think, Jo. I don't know what your both your parents sorted it out together, didn't they? A bit more.
Yeah. I think while we're getting to the therapy chat about our childhoods, webinar meets therapy. Thank you, Jude. It feels like a safe space.
A massive group therapy going on.
Very safe. Jump in on the chat. I had. Yeah, Lola and I always do this. There's lots of crossover and then just slight differences. Mine were more immigrant, working class, Irish. So I think my mum definitely inherited that mindset. But it wasn't necessarily that you'd marry well, because they were sort of working class, and the Irish community all sort of kept, it was a very sort of working class demographic. So, but I think the baggage of being Irish and working class was that you would marry a man that would support you, not necessarily be able to solve it all, but they would be the sort of breadwinner. But my mum always worked. But my dad, I think my dad inherited that sort of feeling, because he didn't come from much money, so money felt very important. And to sort of educate his kids was like number one, because I think both of them never wanted us to struggle like them. So I think, I don't know, I'm very close with my dad, so I think I've sort of inherited his kind of yeah, I'd like to be financially independent. It's strange, even though I've been massively privileged and supported, that feels now important to then try and be that myself, if you know what I mean.
Mm.
Okay. So
yeah.
So you're both in a situation now where, you know, you took a big risk in the performing arts and in this kind of comedian and writers and women. I mean, that's just, you know, it's only been very recently that women comedians, women script writers, you know, have sort of got onto the circuit and been accepted. It's still very early. The money is very erratic, as you both said.
Yeah.
You don't have any savings.
No.
And up until now, this is not going well, is it? But you say
it out loud.
But no, I'm saying it out loud because a lot of women, you know, realize that, you know, their husband might have all the savings, in, you know, or they might have savings, but only in certain kind of contexts. And if they were to divorce, all of a sudden, all of that would fall away, or they might not have the knowledge. I mean, lots of women are much more insecure than we wanted to believe. But you both, you know, did what you wanted to do, and you were courageous. You haven't sort of given yourself any backup. And you were just saying now that you're sort of in your early 30s, that all of a sudden the idea of being older and needing to kind of acquire more security, if you want family or just for yourselves, that is beginning to worry you. So
definitely, yeah.
Okay, and I think there's lots of young women who begin to think, well, first of all, will I have a choice to have children? If I want children, can I support them? Does it require me to meet somebody who can support them? You know, in other words, am I almost back to the idea of having to marry somebody with money?
Yeah.
Or can I be independent? And so, how are you beginning to think about money differently? What are you beginning to do? The answer might be nothing. The answer might be just going which for a lot of women is. You know. What are you going to do?
What are we doing? Okay. Well, I think we. I think it's weirdly. God, I'm going to say something really pretentious. Lola's going to WhatsApp me now, going, "Don't say that on the webinar." But I think you sort of. There's good and bad days, but on a bad day, you sort of go. A lot of live work doesn't pay very well. Like if you go to Edinburgh, you end up having to front the money, and then and then hope that you get it back. So I think up until this point, both of us, I don't know if you'd agree, Lols, we haven't really been able to save because you get enough money to pay your rent and then also to pay. It's like you're investing in your business, I guess. So there's never anything left over to actually put aside. But I think now I think the older you get, we're a bit more like thinking about maybe the commercial aspect of what we do a bit more. Like, can we reach more audience? Like maybe that's doing more online work or maybe television, something that might have a bigger platform that kind of, I don't know, Lola, if you know what I mean. It's like that would be a good step to sort of like in a business sense, think about getting more people.
Thinking more commercial, you're needing to think about how you will build a kind of proper money flow for yourself.
Yeah, and sort of assessing that as we go along, because we've both always had to like work alongside, which I think is really common for comedians or actors or writers. You need to do other jobs on the side earn money to pay your rent, really, because of the lack of security. So I think it's just thinking about a way of changing that slightly, or how viable that is going forward. Sort of if you can keep doing jobs on the side the older you get, or if that doesn't work with your identity and even with your bank balance. Jobs on the side never really pay as much money as you need. So it's
and I suppose, I mean, you might not call yourself businesswomen, but effectively, you've got your own businesses.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jude. Thank you.
Thank you.
But therefore, as businesswomen, with your reputations to uphold, it doesn't always work, does it? It's fine when you're in your early 20s, but to kind of say, and my business is going so well, I also have to be a barmaid.
Yeah.
Begins not to tell a good story. So,
Totally.
So where do you go to for advice about money, about long-term, investments, or building up a kind of small portfolio that might take you, in the good times, instead of sort of spending? Are you beginning to think, well, I'd like to invest it, I'd like to look after my money differently? What sort of conversation in your head?
I suppose, like Jo said, it's like if you don't have a little pocket of money that you might do that with, then it's different. It feels very abstract, I suppose. I mean, I guess it's from a point of ignorance, really. It's only when you start sort of engaging with conversations like this that you go, oh shit, yeah, I don't know. Like, me and Jo filled in the financial health check thing on the Smart Purse website. We both did it this afternoon just to see how qualified we were to have this webinar with you, and we both scored, I mean, really badly. So although, as we've spoken to Desiree before, she said there's no such thing as a bad score, which was a very diplomatic. There definitely is. we scored quite badly. So I think it's starting to think about it now, it's like it would make sense to, like, I don't even know. I got a payment through from a job today, and I was trying to work out whether it made more sense to clear my credit card off a bit, or to keep it in my current account so that I didn't have to go into my overdraft so quickly. And I don't really know. And I tried to look up on my NatWest and sort of find out what the interest rates were and what I was going to have to pay but I didn't really understand it at all. And I'm like, I'm not bad at maths even. It's like, it's a lack of knowledge. It's not a kind of struggling with the software or the understanding of it. It's just, I don't know it at all. So I suppose, if someone could tell me, actually, even if you only could save, £20 a month, this is what you should do with it, then I would probably do it. I don't know, really, basically, at all.
I mean, that's kind of why we started Smart Purse, because you might think that you're an exception to the rule, but actually, you are symptomatic of millions of women. Millions.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how much the financial sector has kind of failed women by, bypassing the way that we think, talk, live our lives, have been persuaded to spend money or not spend money. So, you might have scored a bad score, as in a low level of knowledge, but the point of it is to sort of go, well, we have to begin somewhere, so let's get going. So listen, before I bring the audience listening in, I wanted to ask you about this current pandemic, because everybody now on this call will be aware of really frightening predictions about economic downturns, and people being furloughed, and that's if they have a job to begin with, and places of entertainment maybe not being open for 6 months, maybe 9 months or longer. So do you feel better because you're sort of we're swimming in the same space now as thousands and thousands of other people? Doesn't really matter, whether they're more or less successful than you. nobody will be able to do live work for a while. Lots of people won't be able to earn money. Does that make you feel more kind of isolated or more part of a community? And how does that help your thinking about money generally?
No, I hadn't really thought of it in those terms. Had you, Jo, in terms of?
Yeah, I think my instinct was, I didn't know if it was a bit cold or callous to feel like that, but I did feel like there was something comforting about, as you said, everyone being in it together. There just feels like there's a bit of a pause on everything that is obviously terrifying in so many ways, of course, but it's also kind of a chance to sort of take stock. Do you know what I mean? It was a bit like the machine was going so quickly, and now because everything's paused, you're like, okay, well, we'll all hopefully figure this out as a collective.
Yeah.
You know, even articles we've seen going around about you know, what's everyone turning to now is Netflix, online streaming of things. There's kind of a new appreciation of culture, I guess, if that doesn't sound too pretentious, that kind of feels quite exciting in a way.
Yeah.
I mean, still terrifying. I'm sure there'll be lots of cutbacks and difficult patches, but it's kind of, yeah, in a sort of artistic way, it feels like people are appreciating the arts really generally, books, music, just all the kind of things that we often take for granted when your lives are really busy. So I guess as artists, it feels exciting to hopefully be a part of that dialogue that is kind of, I don't know, keeping everyone on track a bit. And maybe afterwards there'll be more of a sort of desire for more stuff, because everyone realizes how important it is.
Yeah, I guess so. But in terms of like output, and obviously there's online and there's TV and stuff, but it's quite sort of strange to think that the spaces that you've been sort of gathering in might not be available to go and do stuff in for the next, you know, for the end of the year, potentially longer. It's kind of a bit discombobulating to be thinking about, well, how do you, if those spaces are so sacred, then you can't go there, then how do you kind of function? How do you have an output? And again, in terms of money, it's, you know, you don't earn that much from doing a short gig above a pub somewhere, or, you know, in a theatre venue, maybe a bit more, but it's still, you know, not loads and loads, but it's a kind of a visibility thing and a exposure thing that you're losing by not being out there. So that's a bit worrying.
Yeah.
But I guess it's the kind of, in a situation like this, it's, you can't help but think a little bit bigger picture and not really worry so much about your own trajectory and your own career, because I think you're seeing such a kind of global re-examining of inequality and wealth divide, and therefore you just, it feels a bit bigger basically than how you're going to sort out your tax return and your, I mean, obviously you need to pay your rent, and I'm not trying to sound really worthy. I just mean it feels so big. You haven't even, I feel a bit overwhelmed to even start thinking about how I'm going to get in touch with HMRC. Do you know what I mean?
But people are running their own businesses. I mean, I spoke to a business yesterday who basically do laundry. You know, they're a laundry business. They do holiday lets, they do weddings, you know, all the tablecloths and the napkins and everything. They do all that stuff. And they said, you know, their business is just like stopped completely, totally, because they can't wash anything, because nobody's using anything. And they went on the local council's website to start getting some support. And because they have an apostrophe in the title of their business, the website can't recognize apostrophes in titles, and so they can't at the moment. I mean, these sorts of bizarre glitches, I'm sure, are happening everywhere. But obviously, this woman, Charlotte, her first instinct was literally like, well, my business has stopped. How am I going to live? How am I going to earn money? So you both, as entrepreneurs, as businesswomen, have you kind of gone, right, what are our skills? How are we going to earn some money? What are we going to do? Have you put your work online straight away? I mean, what's your instinct been for self-preservation? And also,
it's been
it's a big picture, but what have you decided to do?
Well, we started writing more, so that's something we can do that we don't need an audience for. So we spent the last couple of weeks trying to write a script. So that's been the main instinct. We've also both sort of tapped into other jobs as well. So I do some tutoring for kids. So just done some online tutoring via Skype. So that's been a bit of a kind of security blanket for the last few weeks, is knowing that getting a bit of money still coming in. And I was joking about checking the HMRC thing, but I did also check that when the money is supposed to be coming through in June, I've sort of checked that I qualify for it and stuff like that. So I'm hoping, if I can work out where to put that money into my credit card or my overdraft, or if I can finally work out what it is, hopefully I'll be all right for a few weeks, months. But it's really, it's sort of living week by week and working it out. I guess there's a feeling of just urgently kind of working out how you're going to pay the next month's rent, but then the kind of uncertainty ongoing means that it's quite difficult to plan anything, isn't it, really? Because no one knows what. So even if someone was to tell me now, oh, what you should do with money is this, and invest it here and invest it there, there'd be a sense of nothing being that certain, however informed someone is. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's true. This might be a time when all kinds of financial advice feels tentative.
Yeah.
Because the goalposts are moving so quickly. Do you think you'll take this opportunity to work your way through the quiz and go, right, what didn't we know, what don't we know, and how can we, in lockdown, is money one of the things that you thought, well, I could improve my skills on money? Could you imagine doing that?
Oh,
I'm not trying to sell you an idea, but I'm just interested.
I think there was one section I read that I found quite reassuring. There was a question that said, I think it was one of the articles that was like, how much do you need to start saving? Like, basically acknowledging that problem of, if you're starting from a deficit, is it still worth getting in the know? And the answer was basically yes. So I was like, yay, we're not a total lost cause. So I think it's late. Yeah, I think it's like not waiting for this lottery ticket to come through and knowing that there's maybe some practical stuff we can start doing now.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I am the cheesy one of us two, but again, to bring it back to the learning that we can do in this patch, but I think it's like kind of a good time to take stock of, even like the next creative project we do, can we be braver with that? And rather than thinking of money separate from it, thinking, can we bring money into that in a way of like, it kind of makes you be a bit bolder, a bit like what you were saying at the start, Jude. Women often feel a bit sort of embarrassed to talk about money, or maybe it's seen as, I don't know what it is. I don't know what the connotation is. Maybe we feel like it's greedy or a bit bold. But I definitely feel
you negotiate your fees when someone says, I'd like you to go and do a big gig and the fee will be so and so. Do you instantly go, I want 15% more than that?
Oh no, we'd never do that. No, we would never do that. I wonder if that's gender, or if that's just.
That's gender.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I think it could be, because we often have it being in a double act. It's like money naturally gets split, which I'm happy for half to go to Lola. I like her very much. But you have a debate where you're on the bill with someone and you'll have all paid to get there, the train tickets and all of that. But because you come as one package, it just gets split 50-50. But Lola and I don't live together. That's we've still got our own rent to pay, our own bills. So you can sort of see where that logic comes in. But then you're also like, we're still two separate individuals. So a 50% cut to your paycheck seems like quite a lot. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but you don't confront that.
No,
absolutely not, Jude. We say thank you so much for having us. Please have us back again. So yes.
Yeah. No. It is quite a good time. I know you said you weren't selling it to us, but you've sold it to me.
I'm sold.
It is quite a good idea. It is quite a good time, to go through basically my statements and think, oh, I'm the sort of person that, and I'm quite organised actually, and quite uptight, and will sort of, you know, organize stuff in my room quite neatly and like sort out my filing and make it all like nice like that. But I will still be paying Amazon $7.99 a month for a Kindle I set up a year ago. And I cancel it. So I mean, it probably is a good time to sort of go through my bank statements and go, do you need that weird sort of iPhone insurance that that's actually but you've had for 3 years now, and if you had to pay it out, your phone would be rubbish anyway. You know, all this kind of stuff. Maybe it's a time to sort of look at all those outgoings for random things and save some money that way. I think like small things like that might be worth doing. I think in this time when I've got quite a lot of time. But as we do our own tax returns and stuff. You don't have an accountant either, do you, Jo? So we we both don't have accountants for that. So we go through that. So I suppose in some ways we should be more knowledgeable than other people about what they've spent in a year and what the expenses are and things like that. But I guess the business side is probably separate from your little stupid stuff you put in your personal things that you didn't mean to be spending money on.
That's true of a lot of people, that they will have a job and they can even be fantastically financially literate in their job, but doesn't actually compare always back to their own private life in terms of how they run their own accounts and pay their own bills and notice things like Spotify that they never use or Kindle they bought. So let's, I don't know who's on the call, Desiree, you're on the other side of this, but any questions from the listening public out there? How can I get some questions? Anybody want to?
Is it in the chat, Lola? Is it chat? Did you say?
So can you see any coming up?
Not any. A few people said hello.
That's good. Hello. So I'd quite like to find out from people listening whether that idea of suddenly being pitched into this huge amount of financial uncertainty is making people feel as if, in a way, they belong together and feel that they're all in the same boat, or whether it's making people feel individually panicked. So, well, anybody, while waiting for perhaps somebody to tap in a question, have you, Lola Jo, talked to other comedians, other performers about what they're feeling at the moment, other freelancers?
Yeah, lots of our friends do similar things, and I'd say they share a similar sort of outlook of they're quite anxious about it and quite worried about what's gonna happen. But I feel like it's just in a sort of moment before we fully understand, really. So I think people are sort of holding back and hoping that we return to some normality, basically. I think.
It feels like people.
No,
what was that, Jude? No, I was saying it feels like people. I'd count myself in this. It's almost still in the slight shock phase. So it's almost like before you start making the plan, you're trying to sort of digest what's kind of gone on while you're still getting emails saying gigs are going, and you're like, that's okay, keep the mental health up, we're fine. But it's almost like we're still in the kind of processing. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Lola. So it feels like once the kind of acceptance of it has really sort of sunk in, then you can kind of try and make a bit of a plan. It's just when there's so many question marks flying around, you're trying to, it's almost like wait for the dust to settle a little and then try and sort of make some sense of it.
There's somebody on the call called Melissa Rosenbaum. Hello, Melissa, who's saying actually that she feels less panicked. And I have heard quite a lot of people say that, in a way, partly because there's so many unknowns, and partly because as countries, as communities, and as the whole globe, in fact, like it's out of our control to a degree. Then there's going to be less shame in like not being able to make ends meet, because that's going to be the case for so many people. So take some of the kind of sense of you know, have I made it? Have I succeeded? Can I do my bills? It does turn it into something that is more of a community question about how do we all survive. So how do all the comedians, how do all the freelance writers, how do all the freelance artists, how do we all survive? Is that maybe can, you know, that's partly what your point about the greater issues. There's something that one can do in conversation with many people rather than just like in your own bedrooms thinking about how can you pay your own bill. But Desiree wanted to ask a question, which was, again, like leaving aside coronavirus, let's hope we can soon. How do you envisage your life in 25 or 30 years' time? You know, some people start at 20, start paying into a pension and kind of basically want the house their mum and dad had, or a bigger house than their mum and dad, and they sort of drive their way through an idea of themselves, even if they don't ever achieve it. And it includes sort of material stability. But clearly not been in your minds to begin with. Where do you think material stability or lack of it will be for you in 25 to 30 years? Do you think that far ahead, and does it matter to you?
I think it sort of really fluctuate. I mean, again, yeah, I suppose when you sort of do creative work, a bit like you were talking about pensions, Jude, it's like, I guess part of you feels like you might be working forever. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I guess you kind of hope you'll always have a creative outlet, which hopefully might pay. That's a really optimistic slant. But I guess, yeah, or you'll never kind of want to. I don't know if that, I mean, that could very much change. Lola's like, check in 10 years with me. But yeah, I think you kind of hope that you're gonna, what's the word? You're not going to live to work. You're going to, you know, you're going to earn money from something that you enjoy doing. So you don't really want to retire, if that doesn't sound too romantic. I suppose that was always my vision. I guess if you do creative work, you kind of hope that will sustain, you know, you will always want to do that. I know it's not always possible, obviously, failing health issues and all of these things. But yeah, that's probably an overhang from my 20s when things felt more idealistic. You know, you're kind of dreaming big and not really thinking about mortgages and children. And now obviously our peers are doing that. You suddenly feel like the biggest kid in the room that's still renting with 6 people, no partner, no kids. And you're like, does no one else still want to do that? Okay, just me. So I can definitely feel that pressure more and more. And you have to keep checking in with what you want, because I think the pressure to do all of those things is so pervasive. I don't know where individual choice comes in that. It feels quite hard to swim against the tide. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd love to say I'm happy to rent when I'm in my 50s and 60s, but if all my peers are having dinner parties with Pinot Noir and 7 kids hanging off them, and I don't know, yeah, I'm in a house share, I'll probably feel quite different. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess it's difficult to even imagine. There's a kind of optimism that through age you'll feel that you'll be more stable and more secure. But then I probably wouldn't have felt like that 10 years ago, thinking of the age I am now. So
yeah,
it's kind of a helpful optimism, I think, because if you engage too much with the realities of it, it would be you'd make you quite despondent. But then I think it's probably like we're saying earlier, engaging with these things now is probably quite crucial so that you're not in that position in 10 years' time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that different people set out to do different things. You know, like Boris Johnson always wanted to be the Prime Minister, and you know, and he is. I'm not saying everybody gets their dream, but some people set out to make money. You know, that's not a negative statement. It's just that's what excites them, and they often do. Whereas a lot of people, and women in particular, who set out to, you know, have a life where they're giving something very specifically, or they're exploring something very specifically, but they don't tend to think that money is part of that equation. And you may very well have a very fulfilling career, but you also may end up not owning any property and not owning security. And I think at a certain point, it's interesting as businesswomen whether you need to balance those questions out. This isn't advice, it's just interesting as you get older, you suddenly think, oh, you know, sometimes your your needs change. But
Yeah.
Louise Gray wants to know, how do you keep positive, right, and find humour in the current climate? I mean, when you say you're writing, are you writing comedy sketches at the moment about COVID?
We're not writing about, we haven't written about this yet. I think you find humor there's definitely humor in darkness. There's always humor in darkness. It feels potentially, it's a kind of difficult area to find comedy in at the moment, I think, for us. I think I just think it's a difficult sort of line to tread, given the severity of the situation. Basically, I think we're kind of, it could be our lack of confidence, or it could be a sensitivity, but we'd be quite anxious, I think, to make jokes about the situation, and unless they were completely about our own personal experience within it, then
I was going to say, make jokes with each other. I mean, do you kind of riff off each other and make yourself laugh?
Oh gosh, yeah. I think we're definitely finding things funny.
Lola, you saying that when you look so serious, you're like, absolutely,
yeah,
definitely,
yeah. I'm hilarious at all times,
non-stop.
yeah. I think it's, I don't know. What do you think, Jo? I think maybe I'm being too neurotic there. I just I mean, that doesn't sound like me at all, to be neurotic. But
it's kind of an illusion, isn't it, that comedians are happy?
Yeah,
I mean,
gosh.
Traditionally, comedians are personally often quite anxious and quite troubled almost sometimes. But
we're back to the therapy. Yeah.
We're back to the therapy. Yes.
We're very troubled individuals. Thank you for asking.
So, Louise, the answer might be that they aren't positive. They're not at all positive. But
No. No, but what's the? Is it like a classic equation? Comedy is tragedy with time. I think it's like, yeah, maybe with a bit more space, then you could probably find the kind of nuanced targets that we want to sort of laugh about in a sort of interesting or kind of interrogative way, if that doesn't sound too self-aggrandizing. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty to sort of satirize, but right now it just feels too fresh. That's probably the most we could get away with, is a joke about social distancing, and I don't think we'd do that very well.
No,
in Sainsbury's.
Yeah, jokes about people communicating and stuff, but there's just a tone and a decency thing, I think, when people are sort of not being able to say goodbye to their grandparents or their parents, and you just feel a bit like, I'm not sure it's time to make a funny sketch about it right now, when there's such deep uncertainty and anxiety going on. But I mean, there's certainly things that will need to be taken the piss out of hugely, and satirically there'll be so much up for grabs when every news story that comes out is almost comically dark, some of the things that are appearing with the judgment of some of the politicians in charge and stuff. So I think there'll be loads, but I think it's just about hindsight and distance from it to work it out what's appropriate, really. Maybe that's why we're not top satirists, because of that, because we don't feel the confidence to jump on something and point fun at it straight away. We always need a little bit of breath, I think.
Yeah.
I think you're erring on the right side of taste, to be honest, because I can see that. I don't know. I mean, some of the people listening in are from other parts of Europe and may not get all of the BBC, but there's some kind of news programs, comedy news programs, and they're not really doing very well.
No,
because it's quite hard to come up with anything. I think you're right. We're too near it. I mean, I think there's still material with Trump. I mean, I think some of the politicians, some of the worst leaders in the world, can still be satirized.
Yeah.
But not necessarily very funny. So there's somebody called Ellen Juselius. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Juselius. And about getting braver with material in the current climate. Are there? She just wants to know: are you experiencing better or more collaboration with other comedians? Are you both as comedians and as women comedians sort of reaching out and having chats with other people about like, yeah, what could you do?
Yeah, I think we will do. I think I mean, obviously the summer is sort of gears up for comedy festivals. There was a comedy festival in May that we were supposed to be performing at, and then we weren't actually doing Edinburgh Fringe Festival this year. We were taking a year off anyway, so that hasn't been a huge disappointment for us personally. But lots of our peers were going to go up and do shows at Edinburgh Fringe Festival, so there'll be a real gap there that people will want to collaborate and do stuff. So there's going to need to be discussions about how people carry on, and I think it would be a perfect opportunity for us to collaborate with we have sort of mentioned it to friends already who are also comedians. So I think it will be, if we can work out the literal logistics of it, you know, social distancing wise, then it will be a good time, because you know people do have more time, I guess, to be writing stuff and doing stuff together. So that's a very positive question, Ellen. Actually, well done.
It is, Ellen. Ellen, well done. And also, I mean, and it wasn't just about collaboration; it was also being braver. Like, what is to lose? So, you know, I'm very struck by people suddenly sticking a camera on themselves in their bedrooms and hokey cokey or whatever. It's like people going, well, why not? You know, why not?
Yeah, I guess that's actually, I could think there's a fear of not oversaturating people with content when there's so much, you know, when people are constantly bringing out stuff all the time. But then I think you're right. I think in this terms of the stakes are so high for life and death that the stakes of kind of embarrassing yourself or failing become quite small, really. And you know, like the fear of failure can, in more calm and less chaotic times, can feel so big. And you know, it's like when you're an adolescent, it's like the fear of embarrassing yourself is the most mortifying thing you can possibly imagine, because your world is smaller and the stakes are so much higher. And I think, you know, the more you engage with the like extremes of life and mortality and everything like that, the thought of, you know, doing a shit video online that no one likes suddenly becomes not very scary at all. So maybe, I mean, I'm saying that now, I haven't really thought of it like that, but maybe we should do some more, Jo.
I think doing some shit videos that nobody likes, nothing to lose.
Yeah. I think embracing failure when there's so much bigger stuff going on is probably quite a good thing to do, and it's probably quite healthy as well.
Yeah.
So just a random question about going back to economics, right? When you see, you know, the Chancellor, our Chancellor, and again, different people in different parts of the world will see their own financial figures, you know, telling you about the economy, and bankers. They're not all men at the top, but traditionally there have been. Do you sort of feel, okay, I'm very, you know, I need to feel connected to this world of finance. This world of finance is part of my world, you know, in the sense that we're all related. It's all part of the bigger ecosystem. Do you have a kind of connection to those people speaking about finance and the treasury and all the rest of it? Or do you think, well, it's nothing to do with me?
Oh, no, I do feel a connection, but I don't feel an identification. I guess that might be more in the kind of ideology of your politics and your, you know, your political leanings, I suppose, more than. But I don't think I feel a disconnect in terms of, aside from politics. I think there's a disconnect in not fully understanding the workings of it. I don't know what you think, Jo. You know, Jo, you kind of understood it. Didn't you study more of this kind of the sort of ins and outs of the political system and stuff when you were younger?
But did you mean, Judy, what in terms of how we personally feel connected to it? Is that what I don't know.
I suppose what I'm thinking about is this: that at the moment, when the merry-go-round stops, whenever that will be, who's going to be making the decisions about how money gets distributed? Who's decisions about what gets invested in and what doesn't?
Yeah.
Who's going to be making decisions about personal loans, business loans, etc.? I mean, it's the same groups of people who've been in those situations for a long time. And not me hurling bricks at them, but simply to say that it seems to me terribly important that everybody, and probably particularly women, because they've been less involved, need to get much more involved, which might sound like, well, how do you even do that? But, you know, this is the money of the world. These are the goods of the world. This is the world population. And in the end, it's all of just us.
Yeah.
How do we, instead of just being passive and waiting to see what they all decide, you know, how do we, as citizens, say, no, I want to know, I want to take part, and I want to influence? Because when the merry-go-round stops, the world will have a lot less available cash, and how it's thought about and distributed, and you know, who talks about all of that seems to be very important. So I mean, this is a kind of a wider question really for how do women who are huge consumers but have very little skin in the game in terms of political voice, you know, how do we step into that space and make a difference?
Yeah,
I'm not like you two, by the way. I'm not asking
no.
We'll do it. We'll do it. All right. I'm free.
Yeah, I guess it's not becoming apathetic and not losing the fight in campaigning and trying to engage with those things more, you know, and change the political sort of landscape of things a bit more. So there are more. I mean, there's like been news stories this week, haven't there, about how all the countries that have dealt with coronavirus the best all have female leaders at the helm of it all. And I know that's more of in a kind of crisis management, but you think forward to a month's time, I mean, hopefully a month's time, maybe longer, when they're trying to sort out what's left in the pot of money after they've built all the hospitals and done all the crisis stuff. And you think, well, those places that have women at the helm are probably going to, you know, it's a vast generalization, but maybe they will address some of that inequality a bit better and sort of engage with those questions a bit more comprehensively. But the truth is, you know,
let's hope. That's what we need.
Whereas in our country, it will be slightly different because the people in charge are predominantly men, and there is a discrepancy there, I guess. So in terms of how we change that, I mean, I don't know. I guess we all need, like you say, we're all in it, and it's just us left at the end. So I guess we just all need to be more involved and less complacent, which is, you know, obviously easier said than done, but I guess we just all have to do it a bit, don't we?
I guess oh, sorry. I was going to say, I guess like in every industry, it's like, I wouldn't feel comfortable talking on behalf of a beautician salon or a cafe owner, but I guess it's within your own industry, women speaking up more. I guess the most we can do is probably write some hopefully quite cutting, enlightening things, you know, stories as a way to kind of show the hypocrisies on a personal level, I guess, and therefore probably on a political level. But I think in whatever world that you're in, making sure that you are, whatever voice you can find within the company that you're in, use it. So I guess for us, it's as directors, writing something, putting ourselves in something and being a mouthpiece. If you work for, a restaurant and you are a waitress, is there some way that you can be a part of the dialogue with your management team? Like people feeling supported and able to be brave enough to at least ask the questions, I guess. Ask questions that maybe are a bit uncomfortable, but finding your power within your sphere. And if there's more women in all those industries speaking up, then hopefully that unites. Hopefully that will have a bigger effect. I mean, that's probably quite idealistic, but that would be amazing.
There's nothing wrong with idealism. I mean, you know, one problem would be if everything went backwards, where people were so grateful to have a job that they were given to them, and that women were back in the situation as they often have been, emerging from a war where they still have too much childcare, too much domestic responsibility, and they are forced into the lower paid jobs. Or women can collectively and say, no, we want to make change happen.
Mm.
So everybody listening, thank you so much for joining us. It's near the end of this money hour, and Lola Jo, what's your next week look like? We know that we're going to be another at least 3 weeks of lockdown. Are you busy writing this next smash hit so that you can buy your flats?
Yeah.
And Toy Boys, is that the idea?
Definitely. We're gonna keep scribbling away for the next couple of weeks, and I think we are going to try and put some stuff out and try and use the time to not just completely stop. But as Jo said at the beginning, I think it will be a good time to just retake stock and think about what you actually want to do with your time and how you want to do it, rather than just sort of hurtling through things without breathing and thinking what's the best use of it. So yeah.
Sandra Follick has said, have you ever done a comedy about money? We will now, Sandra. That's the plan.
we haven't. There's money's actually, we always reference it a bit in our sketches, but yeah,
NatWest gets mentioned, but we're going to go harder this time. We're going to declare the figures, warts and all.
Yeah, we mentioned Lolo cards a lot.
Aren't you, Sandra? Yes.
Sandra's going to come. Book a ticket. We'll give you a freebie.
Yeah, when the theatres reopen. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, thanks everybody. Keep safe, and we'll hopefully see you all next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye, Jude. Bye, Lola. Bye.
Bye. Keep safe, everybody.